Hey everybody, welcome to Houdini Hangout. It is Labor Day, the beginning of September. Welcome to the stream. I hope you're having a great day off if you're in North America. If you are elsewhere around the world, hope you're having a great Monday. So had the day off today, get to play around with a bunch of Houdini stuff, which was kind of nice. Doesn't really seem like much of a day off, I guess, but it was fun to just mess around. Hey, aloha. Wow, I don't know. La Pampadora. That's my that's my attempt at your name. Hello. Hey, from Italy. Lignazio. And Jack, welcome to the stream as well. Poxia. Wow, everybody's from all over Italy, Spain. Hello, welcome. Welcome to the stream. As you've heard, and as I've announced, I'm going to be doing Mondays, MOPs Mondays, for September. We'll see how it goes from there. Happy to have you attending a stream. That's great. Glad you could make it. I'm doing these a little earlier because I know that can be a bit late sometimes doing them, doing them at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So going to do it a little earlier right now, and we'll see how this goes. I think it should be good and give more people a chance to attend. We're switching it up a little bit. So we're going to be looking at the MOPS tools for all of September, and we'll see kind of from there how things go. There's a lot of really cool stuff that can be done with this tool set. If you haven't checked it out before, check out Motion Operators on Twitter and all sorts of the socials and things like that. So please check that out. And it's a great tool set. Allows for some functionality that feels a bit more familiar for motion graphic artists, especially those coming from Cinema 4D or Nice. Yeah, well, still midnight where you are, but hopefully this makes it a little bit more palatable to watch at least some of it. So we're going to be talking about some different motion graphic style, ideas and tools and things like that. Tonight we're just going to start out with some simple type stuff, and we're going to move into a little bit of simulation, just from like a basic setup that I kind of was messing around with a little bit just to make sure I had it all working properly, and then so we don't have to fumble around too much with things. But so I've got a little bit of an idea for where I want to go with the stream this evening. But as always, I'd love to hear from any and all of you about what you guys are interested in, what kind of things you're looking to learn, thoughts, questions, comments. I mean, we might not get to all of them on the stream this evening, but as kind of the month rolls along, I'm going to keep track of some different questions and thoughts and things like that, and try to hit as many as I can as we kind of go through this tool set. So, with that said, please feel free to drop questions in the chat. This is conversation, not just, I don't want it always to just be me talking at everybody, but I always like to hear other people's thoughts and questions and ideas and things like that. So please feel free to put your thoughts in the chat. And if you see me, hey Zach, how's it going, man? I'll let others start to see how this works. Yeah, for sure, no problem. But feel free. It's very very open to comments and questions and anything like that. So we're going to start just doing some sort of basic stuff just to kind of get our feet wet and understand, how these tools work. And we did a little bit of this last week and played around with it, actually on Wednesday. And this week we'll kind of continue that and give people that maybe weren't here kind of a little ramp into it. And then we'll kind of go from there, do some simulation and play around. So, let's, I guess without any further ado, let's jump in and we can get started. So let's fire up Houdini here. So one thing that I should mention is that if you want to get access to the Discord server, they're at HoudiniHangout.com. You can go check out. And there are going to be all of there's a channel on the Discord that has a link pinned for all of the HIP files from all these from all the streams that I've done. So if you're interested in getting a hold of those, you can go on the Discord and grab those there, and this one will be there up this evening after we finish it up and I upload it. So please feel free to check that out. So La Pampadura said, switched to Houdini recently from a 1-year Blender, 3DX Max. Now I'm challenging myself with all kind of information. Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, it's always good to learn new things and kind of push yourself. I came from learning Cinema 4D and a few other pieces of software and things like that for doing motion graphics, and then I moved into Houdini, and now here I am. So, you guys can all do it. It certainly is doable. Don't believe all the hype. This isn't an impossible piece of software to learn. So, all right. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of set up a simple geometry object here. I'm just going to say MOPs. We'll just do MOP simple setup, something like this, and we'll dive inside. So I think I forget where I saw this. I saw somebody post something that looked like this, and I was like, oh, I just want to tackle this really simple kind of problem here. Exactly. It's related to logic and how things work. That's very well said. Yep. It's really just understanding. Well, and in a way, it's a visual programming language. You're putting nodes down and you're kind of making a little recipe or program to do something, and it all lives kind of live as long as you want it to. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. So what we're going to do, I think, is just start out with a box. We're going to fracture this up, and we're going to use some falloffs to kind of drive how this object works, basically. So let's take the box. We'll do let's do points from volume, so we can get some points from a volume. So when we put this down, we'll see we get a nice regular grid here. Let's scale, add some jitter into this. So let's do it like 0.5, kind of randomize it here. And let's see, we can up the point separation because we got quite a few points here. This is 1,000. So let's do this. We'll do, I don't know, maybe 0.15, something like that. Cool. And maybe we could go a little more on the jitter. Sure. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. All right, so let's add a Voronoi fracture just to make something a little bit more interesting here. Let's do this, and we'll get some nice fracture geometry here. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some normals to this object just to make sure that we have some nice normals, and as this fractures and does some stuff, hopefully the normals will stay looking nice. Okay, so we've got our Voronoi fracture here. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into an object that kind of is something that the MOPs tools will kind of react to properly. Now, there's different ways you could go about doing it. You could kind of go from scratch and build your own little network that'll set it up with the way MOPs are. But we do have tools that will help us with this. So I'm just going to open up this little gear icon here, and I'm going to go down to MOPs and generators. And let's grab this MOPs convert. This will be nice because what it will do is it's going to take this object and kind of turn it into something that MOPs, that the tools will kind of be ready for. This is very similar to oh gosh, I can't even remember the name of it now. It's not a fracture. Maybe it's a fracture object in Cinema. But anyways, tools that basically take kind of pieces of geometry. Yeah, fracture. There we go. Man, it's been a minute since I've tried to think of what that tool is named. But it's basically like that. You can see we're getting some weird normals. So I'm just going to turn off compute normals here because we've already given it some normals. So we don't need to worry about that. So now we have this MOPs convert. And I'm going to open up the geometry spreadsheet. If you don't have yours open, a lot of times in the base view, it's up here. what I did is just split this top and bottom, and here's my geometry spreadsheet down here now. So what we can see is we're starting to get some kind of default attributes here. If we middle click, we can see we have ID, the MOPs fall off, name, position, and rest. We also have, oh, sure. How do you get MOPs nodes? That's a great question. Let me pull that up real quick here, and I can show you where to go. So let's see, motionoperators.com. Here it is. So you can download the base version on GitHub. So so basically you can, you go here and there's releases. You can go here, and then I think here would be under assets would be the downloads and stuff like that. So this is an experimental release, but you can do that, or if you feel like you're using it in more production type stuff, grab the stable release. But I like living on the edge, so I've got the experimental one. But that's how you get the actual tools, the free tools, and then MOPs Plus you have to purchase, but they're great value, honestly. Oh, glad that was not shown. But yeah, you can purchase it, and I forget what it specifically is, MOPs Plus here, but yeah, it's great price. Oh yeah, there you go, $100 a year for an indie license of it. So pretty nice value, especially if you're doing motion graphics and things like that. So there you go. So a bunch of tools are free. If you see anything that's in this MOPs Plus, those will be things that are paid. So just know that while I'm using these tools, you'll see some free and some paid. I'm not gonna be too careful about that. I do want to highlight kind of the tools that I think are helpful in certain instances. However, really you could go about getting to some of the results of MOPs Plus with base Houdini nodes. It just would be a lot of setup. So just know that these are really, really nicely packaged tools that kind of all use Houdini isms. And yeah, exactly. You can kind of get the same results, but they're certainly way better packaged than anything you're going to whip up in a few minutes or even hours. So Henry's done a lot of really nice work on getting these really usable. So anyways, that's where you can get the MOPs tools. So we've got some things now in here. This is kind of converted. And one of the really important things here is this idea of packing. We've talked about that a little bit, but MOPs is really what it wants to do is have packed geometry, which means that all of your geometric objects are represented by a single point. And that allows for some really easy manipulation of your geometry, because all you have to do is manipulate that one point and the geometry goes along with it. Yeah, no problem, Jack. You're welcome. Drove me crazy. Forgot to unpack. Yep, exactly. So that can cause you some problems after the fact. But the really nice thing is if you just do unpack and drop that down here, there you go. Right back to where you were. So so this is now the geometry that we had before the MOPs convert. So basically this will look exactly the same. We convert it and convert it back. And if you do any attributes or anything like that and you want to transfer them back, you can always transfer these attributes from the packed geometry onto the geometry itself, this unpacked geometry. So we're not going to do that just yet. But okay, so we've got this fracture as individual pieces, right? So let's do something with this now, right? So one thing we could do is do a simple, we can just do a simple linear fall off with this, right? So let's do that first, and we can kind of play with it from there and kind of add things on top of this. So, oh, cool. Plus is perpetual. I didn't know that. Cool. That is good to note. Yeah. Pay $100 for the update for that year. That's interesting. Very good. Very interesting. I didn't look into that specifically, but that is a good thing to know. So okay, so let's just do a simple fall off here. Let's do a shape fall off. Mop shape fall off. I really should just open them from here so you can see them. So here's the mop shape fall off. Kind of simple to hit tab, but there's a lot of things in here, so it's hard to remember each and every one of them. Okay, so we've got a shape fall off. Let's just do a really simple thing like we would do maybe in Cinema, where you might do something like a little fall off here across it. We can see here we've got our fall off that is kind of being represented. And we can preview the fall off, but we're going to notice something a little weird here. And I'll talk about this in a second, but you can see that the whole object is being colored. So that's kind of weird, right? But we'll talk about why that is and maybe some ways around that in a second. But all right, so let's scale this down in the in the Z-axis. So now we've got just a really small fall off here, and I'm just going to animate this across. So maybe we'll do this like 120 frames. First one at 25, hit that, and then maybe the next one will be here. We'll just have it go across real quick like. There we go. Cool. So now we've got this fall off that goes across it like so. And we've got this weird coloring going on, right? So one thing that we want to kind of keep in mind here is that we're using this packed geometry, and packed geometry has some limitations. And when we look at this specifically, we see that this says packed fragments, which is a little bit different than what we might expect. Because if you took something like, say, a sphere and threw this into the MOPs instancer, which is under a generator here, you'll see that this is a little bit different. So I'm not going to play with this too much, but we can see that this is a packed geo. This is a packed fragment. Well, you might say, what's the difference? Well, in this case, a packed fragment really kind of deals with something that are pieces that aren't instances of the same thing. All of these instances are unique. So we're packing the geometry into these individual fragments. So we're getting some of the benefits of packing geometry, but we aren't getting that instancing benefit. So one thing to note is that if you had maybe only, let's turn this down here a little bit. Maybe if we had something like, let's see how fractured this is. Yeah, sure, something like that. If we had something like this and we turned off packed fragments and looked at this, we'll see that this actually colors properly now. But we will get a bit of a performance hit if we don't do the packed fragments and have, well, let's just say, let's do 2 and see where that gets us. How many pieces is this? 123. All right, let's see. No, it's not too bad. It doesn't look like we have any real performance hits at the moment, but we might run into some performance issues along the way. So let's keep this packed fragments on for right now. And I'm actually going to make this even a little smaller. So I wanted to see just a touch. There we go. I think that's where we were at. Cool. Yes, exactly. So Pampadora's just saying, like, is it like a packed instance? Yes, it's kind of like a packed instance. When you take packed geometry and duplicate it, it's just taking one copy of that piece of geometry on disk and instancing it basically on all of the other points that have the same like packed source, more or less. So yeah, it's very much like instancing, and it gives you huge memory savings, and there's a lot of really great stuff. However, when they're each unique, that doesn't really work for you. So that's where the packed fragments come in, and some other tools in Houdini actually make packed fragments. I can't think off the top of my head which ones do, but anyways, yes, good to know. So all right, so we've got our shape fall off here. It's really simple, straightforward, nothing crazy. I'm just going to leave it on fragments for right now. There is actually a little tooltip here. You can see that, it says here, note, packed fragments cannot display any color attributes. Previewing or modifying colors will not work in the viewport. So, this is just a little note, and it's right there for you. All right, so we've got our fall off. Let's now do something here. Let's grab the modifiers. I'm just going to kind of keep this all open here so we can sort of see it a little bit better. Cool. Hopefully this is all easy enough to read. Let's grab transform modifier. That's what I'm thinking. All right. So what we'll do is, as this fall off goes across, right, what we'll do is we'll scale it down. So here we should come across. Oop, I'm not visualizing this. Actually, sorry, they're scaling up. So we're going to have them scale up and go like that. Cool. So we've got our geometry kind of scaling up. I'm actually going to turn off the preview because it's not really helping us too much. We'll see a little bit more detail if we're like this. Cool. So we've got our geometry scaling up. We have it using the local space, and we're also using the uniform scale, which is going to make sure that it's applying to all axes simultaneously, which is obviously probably the best for what we're doing here. Now, if you wanted this to say, come in from a different place or transform differently than the local space, you can uncheck that. But in this case, I just want it to be local, so we're going to let it stay like that. And from here, what we can do is we can actually add a little spring modifier here, which is a nice little touch. So let's just do that, and we'll add in a spring modifier here. And one of the things to note about the spring modifier is it actually is a simulation node. So if you want to make sure that you're kind of cooking this properly, or if you make any changes and it's not seeming like it's reacting properly, just come in here and reset the simulation. There's not a ton of simulation details here. I'm going to turn off some of the things that we don't need, like position and rotation for right now. And we can kind of play around with this coefficient, right? So you'll see that this will sort of, we can animate this damping here. Basically what that means is that's how quickly it's going to kind of settle down to its, back to its rest position. And the spring constant is basically how strong that's going to be. So if we wanted to make the spring a little stronger, there it is. We could probably go up to 1 if we wanted to, and that's going to make a really strong spring. It takes a little longer for that to damp out. The other thing you can do is change the mass of it, and then that way it's going to move it a little bit more. And that can also kind of affect how long it takes for it to kind of settle down. So in this case, what we're doing is we're only modifying the actual kind of resulting attributes of this simulation. We're not really animating it or putting the spring on any of the fall off attribute. That still is what's driving the transform. We're basically just putting this spring modifier on top of each individual piece. It's kind of watching each point as it's changing, and it's kind of seeing, okay, the scale is going kind of back and forth. And I think if we go here, we'll see, let's see here. Will we see that changing? I think we'll see the scale. Yep, there you go. You can see the scales are changing there. We're not actually changing the P scale, we're changing the scale, but all axes are going at the same time. So here we can kind of watch them overshoot. They go up to like 1.5, and then they settle back down. So we're just animating these points here. The fall off is already kind of a thing in there. Yeah, exactly. You could add a noise to the fall off. Exactly. So what we could do is we could add this noise fall off here. We could drop this in here. And so what we can do then is we can kind of preview how this might look. So let's see here. So let's do a, let's see, maybe we'll do, just trying to think of what's the best way to do this. Let me get goofed up with the noise here, with doing like adding noise into it. But let's see. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll add this in here. So if we do the noise fall off, should do that as set. Actually, I'm just going to bypass this for a second. And there we can see that we have our noise kind of added to this. We could preview this if we wanted to. Oh, actually we can't, because these are the packed fragments, so it's going to be a little harder to do. So I'll just view the transform modifier, hide the shape fall off, and we'll just kind of play around with this noise. So what we could do is we could just change this around a little bit, add in a little bit of noise here maybe. Let's do a simplex noise, and just make sure it's uniform. And that should be good. All right. And then here, what we can do is we can just say, we could maybe say multiply. That's not right. Sorry. Why is that not doing what I was thinking it would do? So we got the noise, and then if we're multiplying it by... Oh, right. You could just add noise there. I forgot there was noise. So that's even easier. I can just add noise into this, and that should pretty much do exactly what I wanted. There we go. So we're getting some noise here, and I can... Yep. That's better. That's a much better way of doing this. And then I don't have to worry too much about... I'm just going to get this like there. And this will make sure we've got enough room there. Cool. So now should have some noise like such. And then we can change the frequency around. Change the amplitude a little bit. However you might want it, you know? So there we go. And then if we take the spring modifier here, we can see it's obviously kind of coming in randomly, and we can change that, however. So there you go. That's a much smarter way to be able to do some noise added to it. You can also remap your fall offs and things like that here. So we've got this shape fall off, right? So this is something kind of interesting that we can do here. However, what if we wanted to do something a little bit different? What if we wanted to do something where it was reacting to something else? And I actually saw this, I forget where I saw this online. But what we can do is let's grab another object and we'll kind of make it look for this fall off from an object. So this would be an object fall off. And what I'm going to do, because we were in Houdini here, let's do some Houdini stuff. So let's just add a switch in here. And we're just going to basically make a couple branches here that we can kind of play around with. So this is going to be our shape fall off. This is going to be our object fall off. So I'm going to switch this over. You can see that now this is actually erroring because I don't have any geometry in there, but we can do something about that. Let's grab a torus. We'll use that. I'm also going to do a transform. So I'm going to use this to help rotate it. So here's our torus. We've got our shape fall off here. Our switch, you'll see when you switch it back and forth, it might be a little hard with the compression, but you'll see that this switches either branch. We can have a multitude of branches in here, but for right now, we'll just have two. And so let's take this torus and we will do some fall off here. So again, we're not going to preview this fall off quite the same. So let's just do something else here. Let's do something a little bit more, little helpful for us. So what we can do is we can say preview fall off. And what we can do here is we can actually look at this a little differently. We can display this as spheres, and let's make this a little bit smaller. So here are all of our spheres. Here are spheres to kind of represent each of those chunks. Now, it's not going to look exactly right. However, it is going to show our fall off. So we can see this really nice and easily, and we can see that this is everything that's white is the stuff that's inside of this object. So let's change this to be in the x-axis. We're going to keep the radius like that. Let's make it a little more narrow. Maybe something like so. Okay, so maybe something like that. And what we're going to do here is we're going to just rotate this around. So let's do rotate, and we'll have it go up to 72, and we'll have it go to 360, like that. So what we're going to do is have it go like this. Right? So this will be kind of an interesting little example, because what we can do here is we can actually take both of these geometries. And again, since this is Houdini, we can kind of, everything's live for us here. So here's going to be our actual object, right? Our actual shapes. I'm going to turn this off to turn off preview fall off. Don't need that there. But so these are going to be our actual shapes. You can already see what this is starting to do, and it's got some interesting little details and things like that to it. So here is our torus, and it's animating, right? Spinning around, nothing too exciting. So let's do this. Let's just do, actually, let's click here and click here. These are the two branches we want to merge together, and we'll alt-click and make a merge. And this will just say merge, packed, and torus. Oh, I can't spell. I put an I there instead of a U. So there's our merged pack and torus. So here now we've got this kind of interesting little geometry going on. And if we play this, we'll see that it's going to go like that. And we have this spring now as well. In fact, if we turn this off, it's going to be a bit faster. We can actually see this more or less in real time with it sort of avoiding this. However, if we wanted to see the spring, we'll turn this on. It's all cached now, so it should be pretty quick as well. So we're getting this little springy behavior here. Now, what if we wanted this to be a little bit more bouncy or something? Like, because it's a little bouncy, but it's not quite maybe where we would want it. What we can do is we can actually go into this... we can go into our object fall off and kind of tweak this a bit. So there is a remap in here, which will be really helpful. So let's enable the remap. And what we actually want to do is we don't want it to have this really smooth kind of fall off throughout the whole range here. So if we look at this, we have this sort of smooth kind of from, 1 to 0 range. And what we actually want it to do is kind of shorten that distance down so that it jumps a bit quicker between those two. So we take this and bring it up a little bit, maybe to like 0.4, and this we bring it to like 0.6. So now we're gonna have this quite a bit sharper. There's less area where this is gonna kind of travel between 1 and 0. So if we look at this, we're gonna see that this is now a bit closer. And as we kind of play around with this, we'll see that we can have these shapes start to get a little bit bigger as we get closer to this geometry. So you can kind of control where these are going to start getting out of the way, like how far away they have to be. Another thing to keep note of is that you can have the area of influence be surface distance, right? As opposed to outside or inside. You can change these around a little bit. But for right now, it should be fine with inside. And then from the surface, they fall off from there. And we can change the radius of this too, right? So we could have it be, a much wider radius and, change kind of how this works. But for right now, 0.2 should be fine for us. And we should be able to kind of go from there. So now if we look at this, these pieces are going to kind of jump in and out quite a bit quicker. And we're going to get a bit more bounce to them, which is kind of fun. So let's take a look at this and what this looks like. Zoom in a little here. So we can see it's almost like adding ripples behind itself, right? So it's kind of like rippling as it goes around. And so it's kind of interesting. We're starting to get some interesting behaviors here. We've got our spring modifier. We've got a transform modifier. And you could do this with any type of MOPs setup, right? Anything that has that is this like packed geometry that's looking at the fall off, it's going to be able to handle this type of a situation. So this is starting to be kind of interesting, right? But the cool thing is that you don't just have to have one. You could have multiple geometry streams that might be coming into here, right? So let's just say on top of this, we wanted to add like a sphere coming in here, and obviously I'm just doing this with very simple geometry, and I'm going to do another transform here. And if you're not familiar with this, I'm going to show you a nice little trick to get some good motion here. Let's scale this down a bit. Let's see where we are with this. Yeah, it should be good. Let's do 0.2. Cool. So if you want some good, some interesting little motion for free, what you can do is let's do this in the x-axis, and we'll right click, go to motion effects. You can see there's a bunch of things in here. There's noise and there's wave and things. So we're going to do a wave. So let's do wave. Let's do the period at like 3, maybe 2.5. And I'm going to do the amplitude at 2. So what this is going to do is this is going to actually make a chop network. And it's going to make this little chop network right here, but it just names it motion effects. So if we look at this now, what's happening here is we've got this just kind of zipping back and forth. And actually, that's probably a little too far. We don't need it to go to 2. Let's have it go to 1.5. Nah, let's do 1.25, something like that. There we go. Got a little oscillating object. We can throw that in. And you might think, oh, okay, well, if I want to merge that in here, how's that, how exactly is that going to work? But if you're familiar with Houdini at all, you know that you can grab this and this. We could merge those together and put both of those in here. Yep, motion effects is great for blinking lights. Yep, constant outside of the yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can do a whole bunch of different things in there. I do that to get noise sometimes. Pretty much you can use that anywhere in any parameter, which is really nice. Any geometry parameter or whatnot. So here, now we're going to have kind of two objects that are going to be driving our driving this fall off, right? So now you might not be seeing it too much there, because actually I'm going to do that. It's a little bit kind of going back and forth, but you can see here that when it comes in, it kind of zips in and out there. So, if we had this maybe a little bit longer, we could have, more, you'd see it a bit more. But, this is just something good to know, that you don't have to think of this as like, okay, I need to have I can only have one object coming into this fall off, or just one thing going this direction. No, you can merge them together. You can kind of do the things that Houdini is good at, and kind of have all of this different geometry that's able to drive these different inputs and elements and stuff like that. So this certainly isn't, you don't have to kind of think of this as a separate thing from Houdini. It's a tool set on top of it that's going to take advantage of these different tools and functions and things like that. So I think I might come back to this a little bit later, because there was some stuff that I was playing around with a little bit with creating this so that you could actually have it orient itself properly, like have these objects actually move out in space. The only trickiness there is you need to give it some attributes so it knows what direction is up and which direction is out and things like that. We'll talk about that a little bit later, because I think that's a little bit more advanced. So I don't want to spend too much time on that and like get people kind of, bogged down on that one specific thing. But just know that there are some ways that you can go in and do that. There is actually there's some orientation, reorient stuff, but you need to have some attributes created. And I didn't find a good way to do that only with the MOPs tools. So I can show you kind of how I went about doing that. And then we can kind of, maybe I'll explore this and I'll find something in one of the nodes that might do this a little bit better, but basically just setting up the orientation of each of these pieces, because we kind of fractured these all apart. So anyways, let's, I guess we can keep going from there. So again, just to reiterate, if anybody has any thoughts or ideas or any questions about what we're doing here, how MOPs works, like conceptually, why am I doing what I'm doing, or just questions about different techniques or things like that, ideas for future, kind of explorations and things like that, please always feel free to drop them in the chat. Super happy to be able to at least mention it and just kind of say, oh, okay, that's a good thing to kind of keep in mind. We might do that next week or, whatever. But if you guys have any questions or thoughts or anything like that, please put them in the chat. Obviously love hearing from everybody, and kind of making sure that everybody's following along and it makes sense, because if you're struggling with something, most likely somebody else is probably struggling with it as well. So might as well ask, and we can get it cleared up for for everybody else. Good. I'm glad. So yeah, this is all pretty simple stuff. It's not a lot of setup. It's pretty straightforward, but let's take these concepts and move it over into kind of the simulation world, right? Because if you're familiar with like different motion graphics tools, you're used to kind of taking these things and then maybe doing a rigid body simulation with it or something to that effect. So let's kind of take these concepts and kind of go there with them, right? Let's take these ideas that we're starting to build on here with this kind of simple setup, and then we'll start to put this into some simulation. So let's just add another geometry node here, and let's just call this MOPs Simple Sim. So we're going to do a couple different kinds of sims here. We're going to do first a rigid body, and then we'll look at doing a like a cloth, or not a cloth, like a balloon sim, like a soft body sim. And we'll kind of play around with it. And there's obviously a million different ways you could do this stuff and kind of, yeah. Anyways, it's Houdini, so it kind of, you have so many options. It's kind of mind boggling sometimes. So that can be daunting for people starting. So I'll give you some starting points and then you can kind of explore from there. So what I'm going to do is, instead of doing this from like fracture geometry, actually I'm going to hide this as well. Hide other objects, just if you don't want to see that ghost of your object from your other scenes, we'll do that. And so let's, we're just going to start with something pretty straightforward here. We're going to just do some spheres and kind of go from there. Actually, we might do some platonics. Maybe I was actually thinking about this. Yeah, Houdini's definitely a rabbit hole. So yeah, always be prepared. So I'm just going to hide my geometry spreadsheet for a second here. Let's actually do a platonic solid instead. Something more interesting. Let's see, not a cube. Maybe an octahedron. Okay. Let's do something like, yeah, let's do this. Let's give this a shot. Could be interesting. All right, so we've got our platonic here. So let's take this and kind of start playing with this and making something a bit more interesting here. So let's take this, bring it into a instancer. So I'm just going to drag an instancer over, drop this in, and we're going to make a bunch of copies here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to instance this within a geometry. So similar to what we did before, let's grab a torus. I'm going to leave this horizontal just for this example. Let's make it a little bigger. Something like that sounds good. And then let's see, did I need anything else? No. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to just make a null here so that we can reference this more easily. I'm going to call this template. You can call this whatever you want to, but I'm just going to call it that. Hit C to bring up my colors and make it yellow so I can kind of see what I'm referencing here. So this is going to be what we're going to use to instance onto, or in this case, into. So we're going to do an instance into it. So let's do distribution here. We're going to grab our mesh. And what we can do is we can just click this little icon here. And the reason I capitalize it is because that'll pull that name up to the very top of your list. So there we go. And holy crap, we got a lot of objects here. So what this is doing is it's scattering a bunch of points. Now this is very similar to what we were doing previously, where we were using like the points scattered inside and doing our Voronoi. This is scattering based on the actual surface. So we've got this total count here. I don't want 1,000. Let's do 100 maybe. Even that's too much. Let's keep going down. We'll kind of keep pulling this down until we get to a reasonable amount. I would not eat this. No, don't eat it. It's very, very bad for you. Don't eat it. All right, so actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this and just scale this up a little bit. Maybe make this a little bit bigger, something like that. We're just going to kind of play around with this until we get it somewhere where we like it. Maybe this is 4. Something like that. Cool. All right, so we've got some shapes. We've got some stuff going on here. Got our weird little platonics. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to do normals on this just to make it look a little nicer before we pack it. So, all right, so we've got our instancer here. So what I'm going to do as well is take a circle. Make a circle here. I'm going to put this in the X or ZX plane, and let's make this a little bit bigger. Let's see here. There we go. Actually, I can just do the uniform scale. It's probably easier. So let's just do this to 4. So we're going to have this be at the center point of that, that torus. And if you're not familiar with this little feature, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this parameter. I'm going to paste a relative reference here. What this is going to do is link those two parameters together. So as I change this, my circle is actually going to change as well. So there's my circle. You can see the disk there. And as I change my torus, that's going to change as well. So let's just keep it that way so that we can keep it kind of linked together. I'm going to change this to be a open arc, I think. Actually, you know what? I'm kind of curious. Maybe an open arc is fine. She just thought of something, but anyways, let's do open arc. That's what I did before when I was playing with this before. So anyways, we also want a few more points. Let's up this to like 48. Basically, that's just giving us more points around the circle. Just makes it a little smoother for us. So what I want to do is have this object kind of these instances kind of animate around in a circle, and we can have some stuff kind of pushing it around and making some different ways that this will kind of animate. So we'll kind of animate it with the MOPs tools and then simulate it from there. So we'll kind of use that animation as a driving force for our simulation and kind of step through it that way. So what I'm going to do is grab this move along spline, drop this down. Here's our pack primitives. Here's our spline, and that should be good. And what we can do here is, well, first of all, we can animate it. We can do a bunch of different things like add some twist amounts here. Can have it move around like this, right? So we've got it moving. So that's all well and good. And so what we're going to do here is, we can blend these kind of offsets together. So what I'm going to do is maintain that orientation offset. We'll do it something like 0.6. So I wanted to get them a little closer, maybe not super close, but a little closer. And then what we can do here is we can take this curve and use this to kind of move it along, right? So in this case, we can animate the goal, right? So let's do that. Let's take the goal and animate it around. So what I'm going to do here, just to make this kind of a continuous animation, is I'm going to take it from 1. We're going to go over to animate. We're going to say goal. And then let's do maybe 25. And we'll do 1 like that. So right now, if we just play this back, we'll see we've got our animation going here, right? So that's a little too fast, right? Probably we'll slow that down a little bit, but what you can hopefully see here is that this is twisting as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift click this to bring up the animation editor. I'm going to select this curve, change it to linear. So now it's a linear curve, so it's just going to always move the same speed. Might not be super evident, but these are actually spinning around, which is kind of interesting. I'm going to slow it down, so let's shift click that again. I'll actually bring that up. And let's bring this out a little bit to like 49 here. So now we can see this is spinning around, doing its thing. And let's see, I'm going to do it, just going to kind of find as slow of a speed as I can here. So that's, still feels a little fast. Let's go down here a little bit more. So there we go. We're getting some animation here. I'm actually going to lengthen this out again. So let's do this at like 240, something like that. And if you've never done this before, there's a really cool thing you can do here where you can go to 240. And I'm just going to alt click on this to make a new keyframe. I'm going to change this from Bezier. I'm going to say match in. And what this is going to do is basically match the velocity coming in here and continue it until this keyframe. So now it'll just keep playing this animation all the way to the end. And really all we have to do to change this is change those first two keyframes. And the further or closer those get together, the more they're going to, the slower it's going to animate, the faster it's going to animate, that type of a thing. Yeah, I think it's a nice little feature. It's maybe not super intuitive, but I think it's a nice little trick to just, have it just kind of continue off, and you can change it just with those sliders. So we've got this animation going here, right? And what we might also want to do is just add a little bit of noise into here. Yeah, exactly. You're asking about the goal. Yeah, 1 is like 360. Exactly. So if we look at that, it should basically be, I think it's 1. Yeah. Yep. 1 is 360. Exactly. So, yep, that is exactly how that works. So, yeah, exactly. It'll adapt. So let me pull that back up again. So here's our keyframe range. So if I bring it in, it's going to go up, it'll slide around however, based on this. So if I wanted it to be, like that, it's going to go slower the whole way. Nice and simple. We can speed it up the whole time if we want to, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a nice trick. It's very, the animation editor is certainly something that Side Effects is, we're focusing a lot of effort and things like that on making things like that better, the user experience better. We're always kind of looking into that. So, these are things that hopefully maybe someday will become more and more obvious, these little hidden features and things like that. Yeah, continue after. Yep, exactly. It's exactly the same type of thing like that. So let's do one more thing here. Let's add a noise modifier here. So we can add this. And then this will add in some noise. Now, obviously that's crazy and too much. But let's have it affect the position. I could have it affect the rotation as well, I guess. Copy paste ease when animating Houdini. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if that would work. I come from doing a ton of simulation in Houdini, so I wasn't like animating and doing things like that. So again, I'm even not super familiar with all the different features inside of the animation editor. So yeah, for sure, there's lots of things that could be added. If you have something that you want to add, you can always submit an RFE to Side Effects. I promise they read them. And if they're duplicates, they'll just mark that, hey, 20 people wanted this same feature. Anyways, all right, so let's change the frequency of this here. Let's see here. I think we want it to be fairly low frequency like that. Is there a place to see your old RFE? That's a good question. I don't know because I have a way to see them, but I don't know if there's a way for other people to see them. All right, so we're getting some animation here, getting something going on. I don't know the answer to that, if there's a place to see your old RFE. That's interesting. Not sure. So we can kind of, tweak this around and make this do, sort of what we might, kind of see how we want it to go. Yeah, I think that's actually a little too much. I kind of liked it how it was looking like maybe here. Maybe 0.15 I liked. Okay, cool. And then if we wanted to change the time scale, you could do something crazy like this, and this is going to be really slow. Or we could bring something like this, it's going to be really fast. Whatever you want to do. Lots of fun things to be done here. You could add more octaves into the noise to make it a little bit more interesting or varying, however you want it, however you think it might best affect your stuff. No knowledge on that from me here, but yeah, hopefully, I feel like there should be a place to see that. It's interesting. Anyways, so here we're starting to get some interesting animation stuff starting to happen. And what if we wanted to use this to drive an actual simulation, right? Like a rigid body simulation, have them try to kind of follow this and collide and things like that. Well, there's certainly a way we can do that. And one of the benefits of using MOPs is that these are already packed geometries, right? So these are packed geos. And so because of that, we're able to kind of a little bit more easily kind of just ramp right into doing a rigid body simulation. So what we can do is just basically add a couple things here. If we do an RBD configure, it's going to get us ready kind of for rigid bodies, right? So from here, we've got our 39 packed geometries. What we can do is just kind of give this, make sure that it's doing what we maybe want it to here based on, what type of geometry representation we want. Yes, we're going to get to that in a second. That is a great question about clipping geo. Yep. Because yes. So I think the reason I'm doing it this way is because I think it's cool to be able to kind of drive this the way you want it to actually sit and then let the sim kind of play with it from there, right? So yeah, it's a great question. And certainly you don't really want your geometry intersecting, because then the intersection analysis won't work exactly the way you want it to. And what we could do to fix that is we could change how this is working, right? We could change this, maybe move along spline to kind of offset it a bit more. Like maybe we wanted it to be, 0.8, or, we could push this apart a little bit more. And maybe this is a better just starting point anyways. Let me just take a look at what this looks like. Yeah, they're a little too far apart actually. I want them a little closer together. So let's do something like this. And we'll talk about how we can make sure that is doing what we want it to. But let's first just set it up as a simulation, and then we can go about just fixing that one little issue there. So let me just see how I had this set up before, for my own sake. All right, well, let's just do this. Let's just do an RBD configure first. Let's drop in an RBD bullet solver. If we just drop it right there, it's going to wire it in. All right, so we've got it like that. Let's do collision. Let's add a ground plane, and I'm going to bring this down -1 maybe. Nope, needs to go further than that. -5, I guess. Sounds good. Sure. There's our ground plane. I'm going to turn this off. Control S. I mean, I can. I have it on autosave for myself, but thank you. Great reminder. Thank you very much. So, okay. So we've got these in here. Oh, that's right. I think Henry said something about the orientation with rigids. I forgot about that. I was doing this with spheres last time. I'm going to have to look at what he said. Anyways, so we've got our bullet solver here, and if we just hit play, we're going to see they all fall down, and yeah, it's fun, but that's obviously not what we want, right? So we've got a simulation here. Great, all good. But let's get something a little better. So let's do this. Let's come in here and make sure that we have some of our bullet data set. So this is important when you're doing a simulation. Let's just set this to deforming, because this is going to be moving. We want to make sure that it's actually able to animate itself and keep itself moved around, right? And if we do, so there's also animated here. So let's take a look at this. So if we look at animated, that's really not what we want. We want it to actually be deforming, because with animated, it won't actually kind of respect what's happening to these actual pieces. And you can see here it's trying to sort of do something, but it's really not working properly. Body left the spirit. So what we want to do is let's add in a pin constraint. And let's do this as a soft pin constraint. And so what this is going to do is allow it to actually now start to follow along here, right? And so there are some issues, I think, with the simulation, with the fact that they're all, joined together and stuff like that. So we're running into that a little bit here with these things kind of flying around. And so really what happens here is that these don't really start to collide properly until they come all the way outside of each other. And once they do, they can kind of fix their, you can see here we had a little like burst where they kind of all freaked out. But what we're doing there is, so they're starting to kind of fix themselves a little bit. But really the best thing to do would be to fix that from the start. So again, we're going to get to kind of fixing that in a second. Yeah. Well, Twitch doesn't, I mean, it records the stream, but Twitch is annoying for recording the stream. All of the streams are over on YouTube. So if you want to get to my YouTube channel, I would, you could go to Houdini Hangout if you want to, link right there, or you could go to, you could just go right to YouTube and look up Houdini Hangout. Yeah, there's some weird thing with, it's like a week on, oh, what is that? YouTube. I don't know what that means. Is that like exclamation point YouTube? Is that like a chat thing or something? Should it like give you the YouTube link if you do that? I don't know Twitch. I don't know how Twitch works. I'm too old for this stuff. Anyways, so yeah, if you go over to YouTube, it's a usual function. Okay, I'll have to look that up. That's interesting. So yeah, they're all on YouTube. It's way easier to keep it up there. I stream live to YouTube as well. So yeah, if you're looking for the stream, go there, check it out. It's just easier to keep them there. And Twitch, you have to go and clip them and all that. It's just a pain. It's just a real pain. So anyways, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add, there's a little button right here, which is going to create constraint properties for me. And what this is going to do is allow me to adjust my stiffness for the soft constraint. So what I can do is play around with this. So first they're like super rigid, right? But I can set them to be softer or whatever they, however I might want them to be, right? So I can kind of set them to varying levels of stiffness, basically. Sorry. What did I do there? Oops. It's interesting. Sorry. Just thinking here what I did. Okay. Yeah, I think I have something that I didn't set right. Let me just check here. Make sure I did this right. Soft pin. Collisions. Deforming active. That is really weird. It's working a lot better last time. Somebody asked about substeps. Yeah, substeps might help with that, but I don't think that's what we're running into here. Yeah, so we've got, I could add some substeps in, but I certainly don't think, yeah, it's definitely not what's going on here. Oh, I think it's something on the, that's right. I think it's something on the actual solver. Sorry. Let me just think here. Make sure this is all set the way I want it. Yes. Okay. So let me just double check on the solver here. I think that's what I want to do. There it is. So what was happening there, I didn't have this checked. And so what this was doing, was it wasn't re-importing the constraint network. It was keeping the constraints from the first frame and then moving the points, and then they'd get like twisted and then snap back into place. And then it's just, that's what was happening. Sorry. All right, now we're good. We got it back. I knew there was something, one little switch somewhere, and there it is right there. So this is where all the constraints are handled here. And really you don't have to worry too much about that, but basically all that's doing is just basically creating a little spring, basically, that's from that original point to the geometry that you're trying to like move around, basically the animation. So it's like it can't get right to that point, so that's why we have it on that soft constraint. And so what it's going to try to do is get as close as it can without kind of going over top of that, without being able to get all the way back to that. So now we're starting to get that behavior that we were kind of looking for, where they're bouncing off of each other, kind of doing their thing, kind of animating, however. But you're actually going to notice that in this case, it does it does kind of sort itself out over a few frames. Like it does what you're looking for it to do, more or less. However, in other simulations, it won't be so kind. So let's take a look at sort of what we can do to affect that a little bit differently. Oh, another thing we should just do, and I actually don't know why I didn't try this before. Let's just grab something like a sphere, and just to kind of play around with this, let's grab this and we'll do a transform here, and we'll throw this into our collision geometry. And I'm just going to, I don't know, maybe make it a 2-unit sphere and just move it a little bit over to here. And maybe we'll do it 3. Give it something to collide into here. So there's our collision geometry. I'm actually gonna turn off the visualization of that. Yeah. We'll just keep this as the collision geometry. So let's see what happens here. I think we'll be good. I think yeah, exactly. So that's kind of interesting. You can put a geometry in there. It'll affect it. Obviously, you can see the constraints that are trying to pull it back into position. So it's really kind of interesting to see this, right? You can do these kind of unique simulation setups. It's pretty easy to set up. It's not too hard. It runs pretty quickly. I mean, granted, we only have 39 instances in here, but you got to play with this to whatever level you might like. And RBD can handle like thousands of objects in it. So I mean, we're not really doing much magnetosphere. Yeah, it's actually just colliding with it. It's actually just pushing it away. And so if we made this a little bigger, you'll see that this is actually going to push it even harder. And I'm going to go back to the beginning. It's going to push them even kind of harder for them to get around here. And you can see where those soft kind of springs are pulling it around. So question is, the constraint in this example unique, or does it update? So it does update in this example, because what we want, that was what this little checkbox was doing here when we went into advanced override with SOP. If you read what this says, it says this flag will re-import the network wherever it is set, allowing a completely animated constraint behavior. So in this case, we're making constraints that are moving around with our geometry, right? Yep. So, okay, I think you got it. Yeah, no problem. So as that constraint is moving around, it's always trying to keep those two things kind of locked in place as they move around, because the constraint is exactly where the center point of this geometry is. So increase those instances. Yeah, why not? Why not? Let's give it a shot. Let's do like, I don't know, 100 maybe, and we'll make this maybe make it a little bigger. Let's make this, oh yeah, let's do the torus a little bigger here. So, oh, right. I forgot that I have the scale is the uniform scale. So if I want to change the scale, it's better to do this. Let's do it like that. 6, maybe we'll do 5. Make this a little bigger. Something like that. And then just going to move this into position here. Get that behavior. All right, so now we got some more instances. Here we go. Got the sims going and all that stuff. Now, another thing to note is that if you were doing this and not doing it just purely in the SOP level tools, you might even get a bit more performance, because there is quite a bit that is being kind of handled by these different RBD bullet solver kind of wrappers around a DOP network, right? I'm not going to get into too much about how that exactly works. You can see some of my other streams for maybe some examples of how those things work. But just know that there's stuff inside of there that's happening that is a bit more, it creates a slight bit more overhead. So if you need like a huge sim, probably better to just go straight into DOPS and set it up that way. However, this works just fine the way it is. So yeah, this is all working, doing its thing. I am going to set this back down because we're going to play around with some other tools and things like that. So, sorry, let me turn this down back to 4 maybe, and change this to like that. I'm just trying to remember where these settings were. That's okay. All right, let's do this. Cool. All right, so we've got our bullet solver here. This is all going just fine. Simulating, doing its thing. Cool. Now let's talk a little bit about, I'm just going to cut this off for right now. We're not going to keep that collision in there. Let's just talk about what we could actually do here to clean this up. If we wanted it to say we had like a start frame that we wanted to hit, like we wanted it to start our simulation at frame 24, right? And then we wanted it to go from there, right? Well, what we could do is we could change our animation to be goal could be set. Oh, I have my animation thing still open. Could be set at 25, and we could actually, I'll just move these both down a little bit. So we'll just do it like this. We'll do at frame 24, we'll start. And it'll start moving, right? But at first it's going to just be static, right? You can have the animation go a little bit. That's fine. Now this isn't really, let's add a couple more instances in here. Let's do like 50. Because we do have some overlapping there. So if we want to clean this up, what we would want to do is let's do a little bit of a pre-roll basically. So what we can do is let's use a blend shape, and let's do a what is this? This would be a modifier. The MOPs relax, I think, is what we'd want. So let's take this and let's actually just do a time shift. So we're going to do a time shift. We're just going to take the first frame. So I'm just going to delete this channel. Right click, delete the channel. So now we just have one frame here. What I'm going to do is I am going to set this down quite a bit. And so what we're going to do here, let's maybe do like 10. It's probably good. I'm going to change this radius scale down a little bit here. Maybe something like so. So now you can see pretty much de-intersected all of these. Maybe I'll change this just up a little more to like 2.5, something like that. Looks like we might have one intersection there. All right, we'll do 3. How about that? Well, looks like those are pretty much all de-intersected. There may be one. I mean, this could change depending on what type of geometry you have. But what I'm going to do is just start these all apart like this. Let's just make it really obvious. And then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend shape this. So I'm going to take the first input, that's going to be our source, and then we're going to go to this other input. Let me just make this a little easier to see. Okay, cool. So what we can do here now is we have these two different options, right, that we can blend together. We can take our relaxed version and we can take our animated version. So what we can do here is start it at first frame. Let's go to frame 23. We'll give that a blend of 1. And now we can see that this is blended back in. So we can see that these are blending these shapes back to the position that we had them in and then animating them. So this is really a really common thing in, say, like character workflows or Vellum or cloth or whatever, like giving a pre-roll to an animation or something to let everything sort of settle down, maybe let, collisions come out. I was watching through a whole series of Vellum tutorials that we were, not tutorials, sorry, training for instructors basically. And I was watching through it and I was watching all these videos of them talking about what if you have a character with a cape on their back or something like that. So yes. So what we're doing here is we're basically giving it this start frame to say, okay, here's where we're going to begin. We're going to have everything split apart so there's no intersections, everything's happy and good. And then we're going to push ourselves into that position where there's going to be collisions, where there's going to be overlap. But that's going to allow the whole system to like settle itself back down. This is very common in characters when they're in like a T-pose. You have clothes on them. That's all created that way. When you do like a clothing simulation, you start in a T-pose and then you basically blend into the first frame of the animation and then move from there. So that way the cloth is already in a reasonable position to start that animation. So I literally was watching videos with this all last week and I was like, oh, that should be an easy way to solve this. So what we can do is we can take the output of this, because this is literally, even though this says blend shape, right? This is still all the same thing. It's packed geometry. It's just blending between these two inputs here, right? So this is still all the same data that we were working with, and we can still put this into this RBD configure, into the bullet solver, and everything's going to be happy. So now you can see this is the beginning of our bullet solver, right? And we're just going to do the first couple frames here. It's going to kind of settle into place, and then it's going to start animating, right? So that is a really, I think, simple way to kind of take your simulation and put a pre-roll in. This is also why a lot of, in most studios, they'll start on frame like 1001 or whatever, so that you don't have to go into negative frame ranges to have your pre-roll. You could do your pre-roll from frame 90 or 900 or something like that. So this allows for that to kind of happen. So it's it's a little buffer to give it time to kind of settle into its position. Now we shouldn't have any intersections, nothing like that. And now this will lead us really nicely into our next situation where we maybe want to do something like a cloth simulation. So let's take the same simulation and turn it into cloth. Now, what we're going to need for that is a little different. So let me just refresh my memory here. Yep. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is, let's see here. So let's do this. So we're going to do Vellum balloon, configure balloon. So we're going to do this as a balloon, like with pressure. But if we just take this and put this into here, oh, you're very welcome, Jamal. Yeah, well, glad to have you on the stream. Glad to have you following along. Hopefully it's exciting. And really, I don't want these to feel like these are like tutorials on how to do something. This is really just talking more about how these tool sets work, which I know is a very small difference, but these really aren't just me saying this is the best way to do this. This is just how I found a way to do this. There's dozens of more ways to go about doing some of these things, some better, some worse, probably quite a few better. But if you guys have questions or thoughts or comments or anything like that, please drop them in the chat. Like, I love being able to kind of have this interaction and be able to kind of talk about what it is that we're kind of doing here with these tools and why they're working the way they are. And if you have a question, ask it, because probably somebody else is having the same question. So yeah, glad to have you, Jamal. So this is working fine, which is good. Actually, I'm surprised that this is working. Interesting. So one thing that we should realize from all of the Vellum conversations we've had recently is that this is way too low of a resolution for Vellum, because each of them have like, how many points on them? 8? No, 6 points. So so we need some more points. We need some more resolution to these guys. So let's do that. We can do that up here. We don't need to really mess too much with anything else. So let's do it here. So we've got our normals. Let's just do a... let's just do a subdivide. I think that'll be okay. Let's see. And we're not going to do it that way, because that is going to destroy it. So what is the one we want? Why was I thinking loop would work? I was thinking loop would work. Okay. Then I guess we're going to have to do a remesh. Why did I think that would work? Goof. What a goof. All right. That's good. This will work. This is fine. All right. So let's give this a little bit more resolution. Maybe... don't want it to be too small. All right. Let's do 0.15. That's fine. Let's maybe smooth it out just a little bit. Yeah, that's a bit smoother. It's pretty regular. Cool. All right, so there we go. We've got a little regular grid going on there. So let's see if this will work. I'm not 100% sure if this... will this unpack it? No? I actually did not think that this would work like this. So let's see. Let's see what happens. We want a Vellum solver. All right. So again, this is still the exact same animation that we had as before. Nothing really that we're changing. We're just going to run this down its own little stream here, right? Its own simulation stream here. We're all in SOP still. These are all these tools are encapsulated within SOP's geometry, within the geometry context. So we can kind of have this as like our scratch pad, as a little place to play and make different things. So, all right, let's add a ground position in here. We'll do the same. What did I have that at before? Maybe -5? Yeah. So let's grab this. We'll set the ground position to -5 so it's in the same spot. And I think this is all just going to fall down. Let's just see what happens here. Yeah. So, so the problem here is I didn't think this would work, but I was just like, wait a second, it seems like it's too happy. So the problem is that since Vellum works on points, we only have 50 points in here, so it can't actually do much of anything. So what we need to do is unpack it. So that's why we're running into this problem. And I actually thought that this would be the case, and this is what I had done in my previous one, but I was kind of like, oh, this is working. I don't know why this is working. All right. So we're unpacking. So now we're back to our geometry. We've got our 12, almost 13,000 points. We're going to turn this into a cloth. You can see here we have the cloth constraints being made. Then we make pressure constraints. These are all being done based on connectivity between them. So each connected piece of geometry is going to have its own cloth, basically piece, and pressure, constraint piece, right? So so that's where we're getting the pieces from. We're going to play around with the stiffness and different things like that. But all right, let's throw this into the Vellum solver and see where this goes. Right? Pillows, squishy. That's fun. I mean, that's fun already. We already got some fun things happening here. So I like that. That's pretty fun. We got some jiggly, bubbly things going on. So that's cool. But we want it to follow along with what it was doing, right? So that is going to be an important piece of this. So what we need to do is attach this geometry to its animation, right? And there are some ways that we could do that in this first Vellum cloth node. However, the thing that to notice here is that there's not a lot of controls for this pin to animation. So what I think is a better way of doing this is letting this just be what it is. And what we can do is we can do another Vellum constraints. Drop this in here. And I'm going to set the mode here to pin to target. So the nice thing about this is going to be that this is going to give us a lot more control over how these constraints are made. We talked about this a little bit probably in all the Vellum kind of things that I've done recently, so I'm not going to belabor the point, but basically we can make this so that these are all soft constraints, right? We don't have to have these be rigidly constrained, because then that kind of takes away the point of allowing these to be, for these to be Vellum geometry and all that kind of thing. So, so another thing to just think about here too is that if you wanted these to be a little bit not really constrained by gravity, you could take that out of the simulation, right? You could go in here and take out the gravity force if you wanted to. So that's certainly a possibility. If you wanted it to be even less, like you have to fight against that to keep these up in the air. But I'm going to leave it just as it is right now so that there's sort of a one-to-one between between the collision, or between the RBD and the Vellum, so that they're both kind of working within gravity and things like that. All right, cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the pin type to soft. And I don't want it to be that. I want to do it based on points. Okay, that's what I don't want there to be an orientation pin type. I just want to have a soft positional pin. And I want it to match the animation, which means that it's going to update based on the position of this animation that we've done. So we're matching the animation. So let's take this into here and see what starts to happen. So now we can see that these things are going to actually collide and move and do their thing. They're going to start to sort of animate and move around. And really quick, I'm just going to put down a color node here because these should all have, I should have an attribute on them that we can use for that. I think there should be a name on these. Hey, can I see the node tree for just a sec? Went to get my Digimon, and I don't know what that means. Digimon inside? This node tree? You want to see this? Is that what you're saying? I don't know what does that mean? Went to get my Digimon inside. I'm really curious what that means. Sounds fun. Oh, you dog. It's like, what's a Digimon? That's interesting. All right, so I don't think we have something useful here. So not seeing much of anything helpful. So I think we need, in this unpack, we need to bring something along. So let's grab the name and have that go through here. So now we'll have pieces that we can use. We can do random from attribute, and we'll grab the attribute name. And there we go. Now we've got some colors to look at, something a little more fun. Tell your dog I said hi. I don't know if anybody's a We Rate Dogs fan, but I like dogs. They're awesome. I don't have a dog. I live in an apartment and can't, but I like dogs. They're cool. Anyways, so so here we go. Now we've got some colors going on. We can kind of follow this along and see what's happening. Now we're going to want to up the sub-steps a little bit on this because we're going to get some weird, interpenetration and some bizarro action and stuff like that. So let me just do that real quick. We'll go into the solver, add a couple sub-steps in here. That should be good. Let me just make sure I have enough memory for that. Should be enough, but all right, let's see here. Yeah. So the problem here is that actually, now that I'm thinking of it, those constraints are probably like perfectly rigid. So they're trying to push themselves into each other. So that's part of the issue here. So what we need to do, actually, I'll turn the solver back down because that wasn't the issue. So what we need to do here is change this, and I'm just going to call this pin to anim. Just call these, give these some names here. Is that how you spell balloon? I'm terrible at spelling. I think that's how you spell balloon, but Lord only knows. All right, so here's our stiffness. We don't need the stiffness to be quite that high. Let's see what I had this at before. I kind of did like a it looks like I had it set to 1. That's interesting. Let's see if that works. So, yeah, we don't want it to be that infinitely high number, and let's see if this works. Yep. It's working. Now it's doing more what we want it to do. Where they're going to kind of bounce off each other, keep these sort of vellum-y concepts going, where, you know, we've got soft bodies, we've got smushing, we've got the pressure kind of working for us. And obviously this isn't a high resolution simulation, but it's something. We're getting something out of this, and we can kind of play with it from here. But now what I should show you is what this looks like if now I would eat that. Yeah, now they're like little marshmallows or something, right? They're kind of fun. So just to show you maybe the difference between these, let's let this kind of animate, and we'll take a look at this and kind of go from there. But it's kind of fun. I think it's a fun little bouncy balloon simulation thing. But that initial like animation really helps with making sure that they're not interpenetrating, right? So just to show what this would look like otherwise, let's take a look at this. I'm just going to change this up to here, and we'll sim it, and you'll see what happens. Vellum really doesn't like the interpenetration. It's going to cause a bunch of problems. Let's go to the colored version here. You probably will see it in a second, maybe, but it's definitely, these pieces want to stay stuck together, and they're going to get all pulled and stretchy and weird, and they're really going to never resolve themselves. So while RBD isn't too bad with doing that, because their collisions are done using convex hulls most of the time, and that concept allows for a little bit of an easier way to say what is inside and outside. With Vellum, because you have these positional constraints, or positional, it's all based on the points, right? The simulation is based on the points, and the collisions are based on that, and like it's way more difficult for it to say what is inside and outside of these shapes, and they really never come apart, so they're all kind of stuck together and doing some really funky stuff. I mean, maybe you want that, but definitely like this this little blue one here looks like it's like getting like whipped around. That's really funny looking, actually. But yeah, they never really unstick. So with Vellum, this is a huge benefit to do this blend shape version, 4th dimension. So yeah, and you might not always need them to be quite this far apart. I kind of went maybe a little much on that. What was that on? That's on the relax modifier. So I mean, you might be able to get those a little closer together in some instances, but whatever. It is what it is, and they are working just fine. And when you get to the output of this, what you could do is do a Vellum post process. Let's drop this in here. And now this should actually, oh, all right, master resim. But let me get it going for a second here, and then we'll take a look at it, and I'll show you that we can get even some better detail out of it from there. Okay. Yep, I interrupted it. I know, you're angry. All right, let's just let it simulate a little further here. Sure, that's good enough. All right, so let's look at this Vellum post process here. So what we can do is we can add a loop in, I think, and that will, let's just do smooth wire shaded. Yep. So that'll, I mean, you might lose a little bit of volume on it there. Obviously the Catmull Clark's going to make really ugly stuff, but you could do loop, get a little more detail out of these things, right? Or a lot more detail if you wanted. Maybe too much detail. But so there you go. You've got your, you've got a much higher resolution sim here with some, with quite a few more polys. You could also do this detangle, which is really helpful because that'll make sure that if there are any places where these are stuck together or doing something really weird, it'll just correct that. Now, in this case, we shouldn't be having that, but on the off chance that it does, you can just set that up. And we don't need the thickness, so that's all good. Everything looks good there. Now, one thing to note, and I actually am seeing this right here, and it's kind of wacky, right? Like that doesn't look right. What's going on there? So one thing to keep in mind is that this cloth actually has thickness, and I did not go in and reset this kind of properly. So let's take a look at this here. So let's visualize the thickness, and we can see how thick these are based on these little spheres here. So let's knock that down a little bit. Let's do this by 0.1. And what we could also do too is we could pressurize these a little bit more. So we could do these, let's see, rest length scale. We could do like 1.25 maybe, give it a little more pressure to start with here. And these should kind of puff up a little bit more. There you go. You saw them puff up. And now they'll have a bit more kind of pressure inside of them. They'll want to kind of push back on each other. So now they're just a bit more like solidly and like more heavily inflated, right? So, so now we should see that when these have collisions with each other, and we'll let these keep going a little bit further here, a little more. Let's find a spot here where these are kind of smacking into each other. Maybe here. So now they should hopefully be a little bit closer to each other. And then when we do our Vellum post process, we should also, they're still a little bit away from each other, but they're, the tighter you can kind of get that, I guess, the better it'll be overall. So, you want to make sure that you have your thickness figured out and that they're, actually doing like an old impact. Oh, yeah. Like that was an old impact. Yeah, it might've been. So that's kind of the idea of how you can take something like this and bring it into, into Vellum and do something here. Now, there's all sorts of different parameters and things that you can change here. If you want the cloth to be stretchier, you can turn the stiffness of the cloth down. If you want the bend stiffness to be lower, you could turn that down. There's a ton of different little options that can be changed here. I'm just going to turn that off for right now just to keep the coloring. But yeah, so you can change the stiffness. You can change how stiff that pressure constraint actually is, like how much you can actually push against that pressure. You could make them uninflated if you wanted to, like 0.08, and they're going to be like saggy, like bags, just something weird, like almost like weird pillows or something. I don't know. They look really weird. Don't really like that. Let's do 0.9, not quite so high. Yep. So lots of different options there. Oh, you're not spamming too much? No problem at all. Happy to No, you're totally cool, man. You don't have to be sorry. It's totally fine. The chat goes to both YouTube and Twitch, so it is a everybody's welcome to chat and talk and whatever. So no, please feel free. So this is sort of, the idea that I was playing around with, and I think it's pretty neat. I mean, obviously what we could do here again, just to show this, we could take this and we don't need any collision geometry here. So let's just do this. We'll just grab this and put it in there. I think that should be fine. Let me just see where this is. It's right there. Yeah, it's not going to like that. So let's do this. Let's actually animate this as well so it doesn't get like stuck on it. So let's start at 0. Let it go up to 23. Let this be back to 5. Ooh, that's funny. Blonk. And so then we'll have a animating collider. I think that'll work. Oh, if I would have hit, if I would have keyframed it, that would have worked. 0. That's pretty crazy. Can't believe it actually does that. All right, let's see if this works. Yep, sure does. Might be a little on the big side there. Now we could also turn down the static threshold of friction. So if we do, let me just do this. I think that'll make it way more slippery. So let's just see if that does it. Pretty interesting. Getting a whole bunch stuck right there. It's kind of cool. All sorts of random stuff going on here, so that's kind of neat. Yeah, so you can see that we're getting some interesting stuff here. I don't think. Let's see. The pin to animation is taking the MOPs position animation, but would this cloth sim work with MOPs scale animation? More difficult to set up with scale. I'm hearing the pillows flowing. I like that. Yeah, that's a great question. Let's do something like that. Let's play with that and see if we can't get that to work. I think that should work just fine. In fact, I originally had that as my idea for how to make sure that it wasn't overlapping, and then, or how to make sure that they weren't intersecting, like to have them scale up. But then I was like, I could just move them in, like that's easier. So, but yeah, it should like respond to that. So, yeah, it's a great question though. Yeah. So let's do this. Let's actually use let's use a fall off to do this. So, all right, so we'll do it here. Let's do a, we've got it right here actually. So let's do just do a shape fall off. I think we can get a sphere from this, right? Spherical, yep. All right, so let's do this. We'll do a shape fall off from spherical. Just got to hit enter to enter the visualize state here. There's our sphere. And let's move this around. We can see it's visualizing here the fall off. Just so I know, where is that circle? Oh, it's not animated in yet. Okay, it's over there. So let's just put this on this side here. So we'll give this a nice, hello. All right, so we'll have these scaled down in this section. See if that works. So when they're over here, they're going to scale down and then back up. So we'll use this. We'll do a, no, I'll use these. Transform modifier. Hello. All right, and then let's do this with uniform scale. Maybe go down to a quarter. Yeah, quarter's fine. And maybe we'll just add a little bit of noise into that. Do time varying just so it's something. Yeah. All right, cool. Let's see how that works. All right, so we've got these. So the interesting thing here too to note is that it's actually noticing the size of these, right, as it pushes them apart. And so it's using the scale of these to make sure that it's when this relax modifier pushes them apart, it doesn't have to push those apart quite as far. So like if I turn this off, you'll see that this section just shrinks. The rest of it kind of stays the same. So it's really, really interesting, like that, just the way that works, like really well set up, like good stuff. Okay, so let's see. Not sure how this will work, but we'll give it a shot. No, it doesn't look like it's doing it properly. That is an interesting question. Why is that not respecting that? Let me just see. Let me just see if those are actually coming in. So is it that rest length would need to be updated in the solver? Maybe. Maybe. Yeah, I'm just thinking about that. Yeah, the constraints are you're right. I think the constraints are keeping them small. Right. Yeah, what we would need to do unfortunately is that we would have to update the constraints to animate the constraints inside of it. So let's see. Yeah, so if I put a null down here and just call this constraints like so, I probably... Yeah, I think that's... No, I think you're right. Because what it looks like it's doing... Let me just look at this one more time. What it looks like it's doing is the pin to animation is kind of doing what you would expect it to, right? So, like, these are growing, right? If you look here, like, this is fine. The pin constraints are totally doing what you'd expect it to. However, if we look at the Vellum constraints here, let's see, let's turn off some of these. Yeah, so that's the there's the problem right there. The Vellum constraints are just sitting still, so they're not actually updating. So that's the problem. Those constraints are staying exactly the same, which normally is fine because the pin constraints are the important thing that actually is pulling it along. It's not the actual individual in between constraints that are the issue. So let me just try this. If I had both of those. Sorry, just trying something really quick before I go too crazy on this. Nope. Nope. Okay, so I just wasn't sure if that would do it or not. Yes, they'll have to be solved. They'll have to be scaled inside the solver. So, so all I'm going to need to do is basically grab a SOP solver here. I'm just going to call this update constraints. Sorry for the messiness of this. I'm realizing I'm not naming anything right now, so please forgive me when you look at my HIP file later. All right, so we just want to grab the constraint geometry instead. Constraint geometry, that should be right. There we go. And what we're going to do now is we are going to update this. So all I need to do is merge that in. So let's go back in here. Object merge. I think. Let's try it. It's the worst that's going to happen. Totally screw up. I always click that recently. I don't know why. All right, so we need, no, go away, that. Constraints. I think that might work. This might work. It might just totally not work. I don't know. I don't know why my brain's just acting a little funky right now. Let's see. Oh, yeah. It looks like something's happening there. Yeah, I think it's working. I don't know if it's updating the rest length, though. It's definitely doing something better. It's not working perfectly, but it's doing something. Yeah. That's working. All right, let me turn this color on so we can actually watch what the heck's going on here, because it's a little hard to see. Yeah, that's working. Interesting. Let me see if those rest lengths are updating here. I feel like they should be. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. They are updating. Cool. Yep. Perfect. So there we go. I mean, it's working. I mean, obviously you could make a more interesting simulation than that, but let me just undo this collision here and just see what happens. I mean, it's something. Maybe not the most interesting simulation in the world, but so yeah, this is kind of the neat thing about using the tools this way. Yeah, seriously, thanks, Zach. That was a great question. So it's kind of the neat thing about using the tools this way, right? We can just set up falloffs to be able to affect these different elements, right? Now, the one thing that we're going to talk about kind of later in all of this is actually using MOPs within DOPs. Sorry for all the ops words. Because that is a thing, and that's with MOPs Plus. So that is a very specific part of what's going on here. So let's actually look at that real quick. Where is it? MOPs Plus. So I'm actually... Oh, that's crazy. Is that really a... Wow. See, I haven't used this yet, so I'm not 100% sure how this works, but this is something that we will need to play around with, because I think what you can do is actually do this in here, which is really cool. Now the question is, how will this work exactly? You can't go inside of that. I am not sure if this works with Vellum. Okay. Sorry, constraints. Yep. Run over primitives. Yep. Okay. Let's try it. Transform modifier. Let's see if this works. I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to turn those off. Hello? Okay. So this is all MOPs plus stuff. So let's see if this works, because this is pretty sweet if it does. All right, so let's move this over here. And set that to 0, set this to 5. Actually, I can just... Thanks for joining, Jack. Yeah, no worries. Wow, it's late. Well, thanks for joining, and hope it was nice to at least have it start a little earlier than it did before. But yeah, thanks for joining. All right, so what I'm going to do is just match this. So inner outer 4.2, 1.25. Cool. Let's go back in here. Sorry. 0.25, something like that. Okay, cool. Let's move this in a little bit like that. Can we actually preview this in here? That would be really cool. Does not look like it wants to show for some reason. Oh, because it's on constrained geometry. If this was on actual geometry, it would show up. Wow. This is really nice, actually. I haven't played with these yet. All right. We're going to do this. 0.25 on the constraints. Run over geometry. No, we want to run over constraint geometry. Don't think we want to do any. Nope, don't want that. All right, let's see if this works. I literally have no idea if it'll work or not. I mean, it did something. What did I do? Oh, I ran it over the points. That's the problem. It's got to be over the That's cool. That was fun. All right, let's try this instead. I don't want any force. I just want to scale it. All right, let's see. Any better? No. Oh, that's funny. All right. But here, we're starting to see it. We're starting to see where it goes here. I got to figure this out and get a little better with this. But, we'll get there. Anyways, so for now, MOPs plus, you'll sit over there on the side. Get rid of that. Cool. Okay. We'll just leave it as it was. that should all work. Cool. I am going to... I'm actually going to make a little network box here just so people know what the heck I'm doing. This is just... all right, cool. Scale down pieces by fall off. There we go. All right. You can turn that off if you want to. Date constraints. Cool. Great. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to show. If there's any questions about that, we can certainly kind of go over that. If not, and I'll give you guys a second to type up any thoughts or questions. If not, what I'm going to do is go back to that previous example and kind of do the update to figure out the orientation constraint, or not constraint, the orientation attribute, so that we can kind of move them in directions that they that might be beneficial for us instead of just scaling them down. So if you got any questions, drop them in the chat. If not, I'm going to move on and go. Sorry, I muted for my mic to take a drink. Okay, so we got this thing. And we want to mess around with this and do some adjustments here. So let's do this. I'm going to just cut this out for a second. And we'll just keep this guy here. I'm just kidding. Just messing with you. Yeah, sorry. I try not to drink in everybody's ears if I can think of it, if I remember. I just don't. I know people get grossed out by that kind of stuff. So, the problem is I can still hear myself in my headphones. It's muting it in the computer and not for me monitoring it through my audio interface. I wish. Yeah. I should get they have like these things called mic drops that are literally like a little foot pedal that you just stomp on and it turns your microphone off. Like it mutes the actual XLR through. So anyways, maybe I'll get one of those eventually. So I can hear if I mute myself. It's ASMR. Okay. So what were we doing? Here we go. We've got all these points and we want to set the orientations on them, right? Because if we come down here, let's do this. We'll do extract all points. This is a nice little feature. This will set an add node into delete geometry, but keep the points. So we have all of our points here. Let's go back into point mode. I think this should have an orientation on it. No, it doesn't. Have an orientation on it down here. I can't remember. Yes, we have an orient now. Okay, so if I turn on my axes here and turn off that, I should see now I have an orientation for all of these, right? Which is cool. But the problem is that they're in world orientation. So I'm looking at the center points of all of my packed fragments. So these are all the actual packed points right there. You can see they're all in the same orientation. So we need to do some things, right? We need to figure this out. So what I'm going to do, a couple different things. I'm going to calculate a normal vector, and I'm going to calculate a up vector. And with that, I'll be able to make an orientation that's like basically from the center of this object. Now this is centered to world space, so it's pretty easy to do, but you should be able to take that and kind of expand it from there. So this is going to be a little bit more advanced, but hey, hopefully you can follow along, and if not, go back and watch again. See if you can make sense of what I'm trying to explain. So let's drop down a point FOP. I'm not going to do this in Vex, even though you could. I'm going to do it in VOPs just so hopefully we can make a little bit more sense of it for anyone that is not super familiar with Vex. So I'm just going to try to give myself a little space here. All right, so this is going to be okay, because this is going to be confusing. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to turn these axes off, turn the points. I can leave that on, I guess. Okay, so what we need is we need a normal. We need like an attribute that's basically create a normal attribute, right? So what I'm going to do is have it calculate the, I'm just going to use the position as the normal and then normalize that. So what this is going to do is I can literally just connect P to N, and I should be able to now see that this is going out from the origin, right? Because if we turn on our world grid here, we can see that that's 0, 0, 0. And all of these points, their positional vectors are pointing away from the origin. Now, some of them are much smaller. You can see they're tiny here. And some are a bit too big. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a normalize. So basically, this is going to turn them into single unit vectors. So now they're all unit vector length. They're all length of 1. So that's good. So we have a normal. So that's good. What we need next, I'm going to collapse the exploded node. Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? I'm going to close that just because we don't need that open. The next thing I'm going to do is let's create a constant. So this is just going to be a vector that we can use. So let's just do a straight vector. And this is going to, I'm going to call this up ref. So this is going to be up reference. And this, so it's 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. So this is just a vector pointing straight up. If I wired this into N, you'd see that it's just all pointing straight up. So that's cool. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a cross product between this normalized normal vector here and our up reference. And if we do that, we should see, let's see, what's the best way to do this? Let's do a, can I just do X? Yep, X, do a visualizer. And will this allow me to do a, yep, sure will. So let's do a marker, and we will do a vector. I think this needs to be turned on. There we go. Cool. So now what we have here is, hello. Hello? No? You don't want to update for me? Okay, that's weird. If I, okay. Okay. Weird. It doesn't update. Okay. So there we go. So we now have what I would call maybe I think that would be maybe like a bitangent or a tangent. But so now we have a perpendicular vector between those two. So whenever you do a cross product, you're basically getting a vector that's perpendicular to the two original vectors that you put in, because we put an up vector in and we had this kind of outward facing vector here. And so because of that, we now have a vector that's facing to the side. And now we're going to do a thing called a double cross product, which is basically just taking both of those. And now we're going to go like this here. We should have, go down there. Okay. Now we should have like that. And now, so this is good, but we want it to face, I think, the other way. Like that would be up to me. This looks like down. So if I just hold down Shift R, it'll just flip them. And now we have them changed like that. And what I'm going to do is just make sure this is normalized as well. Just normalize that. Make sure those are all good. Looks like they're good. Cool. In fact, this one should be normalized as well. Actually, probably this is more the important one to Hello? Let go. Yeah, math is awesome, right? Math is so cool. All right, there we go. All normalized, all unit vectors, all good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this as a bind export. I'm going to call this up. It's going to be a vector. Now, if I wired it in, it would override, but that's okay. We'll just do it like that. So now we have n and up, right? And what I can do here, now I can just keep these attributes just to have them, I guess. But what I need to do is actually create an orientation from these. And so let me just remember this real quick. Let me just go back and look at what I did. Just because there's the last little piece I don't want to be stumbling around too hard with this. All right, so we're going to use... Okay. So here's how this works, which is a little weird maybe, but we're going to create a look at, because this is a way that we can create an orientation, or I'm sorry, this will create a matrix 3, which is kind of a rotational matrix that we can then use to make an orient from. So here we go. So we're going to use, first of all, this up can just get wired in there. That's up. Our from is going to be this normal vector. And then 2 is just going to be the origin. So let's just do this. I'm going to middle click here, hit a constant, and we'll just set this to 0. Yeah, the brain is going to hurt a little here, but take a look at it later, maybe when you get a chance to let it heal, when it heals and you feel like your brain's working a little better after I've sent it through a blender. So what this is doing is creating a matrix. And what I'm going to do then is do a matrix 3 to quaternion. Now, don't worry. It's a quaternion. Don't be scared. It's just let it happen. It's fine. We'll do a bind export here. And we'll wire that in. Make sure this is 4 floats. And we'll call this orient. And if we did this correctly, yeah, look at that. We've got axes that are pointing in the direction we want it to go. Hooray. It's very exciting. So basically, let's just recap what we did here. So what we did is we used our position as our normal, right? That's right here. So this is now our normal. We have this wired into n just to kind of keep it as an attribute, but this is our normal vector. Then we do one cross product with an up as a reference, just to kind of get us oriented properly. We normalize that to make sure it's unit length. Then we do a second cross product. And what this is going to do is give us that perpendicular vector to those 2 that we have originally, which was actually a side and an out. So then we're getting our up as well. And once we have once we've calculated both our out kind of normal vector and our up vector, we can put that into our look at. That creates this orientation for us, which is this matrix. And then we just convert that into a quaternion, which is what an orient is. And then we're all happy. So we're still not quite to the end, because we need to now take this and get this to go back onto our geometry, right? Because if we come back down here and look at it, boo, we're still there. But that's okay. We have a fix. We have a fix. So now we can use the MOPs reorient. We're going to put this in here. And why are we angry? Why are we angry here? What's happening? Oh, but it does. The point attribute orient does exist. Hello? Oh, that's why. Got to change it to reference geometry. just not thinking of it the right way. In this case, is the constant orient the same as the normals? Are you talking about, oh, constant is 0, 0, 0. Yep, exactly. No, see, that is actually different. So that's basically saying where we're looking from and looking to, right? So it's kind of like we're looking from this point to this point. So it's kind of like we're taking that. Oh, yeah, actually, we probably, I wonder if it would do this. Hold on, sorry. I'm just going to try this for fun, for funsies. That might do the same. Yes, it does the same. So it doesn't have to be that normalized vector, because what we're doing is basically we're using the position to say, you know, each of, like, when you're running over this, right, each of these from here is going to be the position, or it could be the normalized position. So we're saying we're looking from the position, which is actually what our normal ends up being. And then we're looking to the origin. So it's just basically we're looking, it's kind of hard for me to we're looking this direction, like back towards the origin. Not using normalize is because no add and subtracts, right? I think you don't have to use the normalize, because what it's doing is it's looking for position. It doesn't need a normalized vector. So it's basically using a from position and a to position. And then you're using these up, this up vector to kind of orient how it's sitting. But, yeah, you don't need to use adds or subtracts. No. The normalize just makes sure that it's the correct length, that it's the length of the vector is equal to 1. Basically, that's what normalize does. But anyways, so okay, so we're good there. That's great. This should be oriented now. And if we look down here, maybe, oh, what? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. That seems wrong. Oh, maybe. Oh, okay. There they are. The ones that are like deforming are in the right spot. Okay. So I think what we can do now is we can say, let's see here. We're in local space still, uniform scale of 0. Yep, there we go. So what we should be able to do here is we can now move them in these orientations. And same thing with the translate. It's going to move it out in that axis. And then up is going to go kind of up, or obviously down. So it's going to move them in those directions. So now we have our orientation correct. So that is lovely. I think if we do it this way and just look at it again, we'll see that this does not work. It just goes one direction. We add the reorient in, and now it does what we were hoping for, which is lovely. All right. So now if we look at this and kind of watch what this thing does, we'll see that we get, it's even going to transform a little bit more kind of as it goes around. And what was the other thing I needed to do here? Simulation. Oh, position. That's what I needed to do, right? It's actually adding the spring on the position as well. Oh, yeah. There it is. Now it's really grooving. Obviously it's a bit overkill. Let's let this do its thing. Obviously going a little crazy, but we could maybe do it something like this. Maybe not even. Keep playing with this a little bit. There we go. So now we actually have the ability to move it in some sort of reasonable reference frame and also scale it up and down. So we have a couple different ways to control how this is working. So yeah, that is how you do that. And it's a little crazy. There's some scary quaternions that happen, but you just pretend, you just close your eyes, kind of pretend it's not happening, and just let the math do its thing. And you get some kind of cool results. So I think this starts to make it really interesting and allows for some really neat options. And this, I mean, while yes, it is obviously a bit more complicated, this is really shows some of that amazing power that Houdini allows you to have, right? Where you can actually go in and tweak every little thing that you could possibly want. Now, if you don't want to do that, that is where these MOPs tools are really powerful, right? Because not only are they wrapping around some of the procedural nature, the absolute tiniest little minuscule things that happen within your simulation, or within just an animation like this, you can get in and tweak every single little point if you want to. I mean, there's so much fine control that you have here to be able to control even those orientation attributes, right? If you wanted to, you could also do something crazy like if instead of, creating this orient like this, what you could actually do is create that based on a randomized kind of normal attribute if you wanted to. So they could just randomly go in different directions and come back in, right? So there's a lot of different things you could do. You don't have to create your normal attribute like this where you just take your position and do it this way. You could actually bring in your normal vector if you wanted to. So we could do something like vector adjust, attribute adjust vector. Instead of V, we'll do N. Turn these on. And what we could do is set initial, set always. And let's do noise. And we'll make sure they're zero centered. Yeah, let's just create some crazy things like that, right? Whatever. And then let's just enable post-process, make sure they're all unit length. Cool. It's great. That's exactly what we want. You can kind of play with this however. You could obviously set this to your heart's content, but there we go. Random vectors. If we came in here and instead of doing this, we could just set it here, right? This should more or less do the exact same thing. And so what we should be able to get from here is our crazy orientations. And there they are. They're all kind of in their own crazy setup. I'm just going to move this over a little bit here. I'm going to call this randomize N. So there, now we have all these different orientations. Those are going to get added onto here. And if we watch this, we should see that this will do some maybe wacky stuff. I don't know. Let's see. Well, it kind of pushes them out in different... what it should be doing is basically pushing it out in different directions. I don't know if we're seeing it quite as heavily. Let's look again. Yeah, there's some weird stuff going on there. Let's see. I'm going to do this. Just going to really give it a good push. Yeah, so they're all kind of moving around and doing their own thing. Let me just make sure that this is actually... Yeah, we got some wacky stuff going on there. But anyways, you can go around, play with these. You've got all that control that you could possibly want, right? So hopefully this is just an interesting little experiment to kind of see what you might do with this kind of stuff. But there we go. There's kind of MOPs Monday, day 1. Hopefully interesting, hopefully helpful. Definitely fun for me to play around with some of this stuff. It's bringing me back a little bit to my more motion graphics days. So it's kind of interesting. Haven't done some of this stuff in a while. So doing some of these random little setups are cool and different, and kind of a unique little change of pace for me as far as, not doing VFX per se, more in the, motion graphics world. And that's kind of cool. Oh, that's too big. Where do I work now? I actually work at Side Effects. I'm a training lead for Side Effects in the education and training department. So yeah, my job is not to do things, but it's to help people. So actually it's kind of neat. If you look at this too, now that I'm noticing this, you actually see that sphere do quite a bit more interesting stuff. When you see it come back through, it actually like kind of bounces in a neat way. So it's kind of fun. Yeah, so hopefully that was interesting. We're still going to do our regular weekly stream on Wednesday. I had a really interesting suggestion about doing a, let me see, where was it? Some height field experimentation, which was pretty neat. And so we're going to play around with some height fields and see if we can't get some interesting results. I kind of looked at this Man versus Machine Hive event and took a look at that, and we're going to play around with that a little bit. So Wednesday, we will be doing some height fields and some animation, some interesting little design pieces, and I'm definitely learning some interesting things about how people might use those, kind of use and abuse height fields. Usually you just think of them for terrain, but you can actually do some really neat stuff with them. I hadn't really ever thought of doing some of the stuff with them that Man versus Machine does, which shocker that Man versus Machine is doing cool stuff. So anyways, so that's going to be Wednesday, and from there we'll kind of just, we've got lots of stuff going on here. So hopefully we've got some cool streams coming up, more MOPs stuff. So if you're interested, as always, HoudiniHangout.com, check out the site. There's information about when I'm going to be streaming. I do have a week coming up. I'm taking a little vacation with my family, but that's information is in the schedule, so that should be reflected there. And links to YouTube, Twitch, all the stuff. And you can get all of the information that you might need there. I also have all the past streams now available on Houdini Hangout, so that's should be something that continues to work. I'll maybe monitor that from time to time, but so thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully this was a good beginning to the MOPs kind of playground and working with stuff. If you guys have any thoughts or any suggestions for where we can go with this stream is not just, me doing what I think is cool, but I'd love to do more of what you guys think is cool too. So if you guys have any MOP suggestions, feel free to go in the stream suggestion and make some comments in there. So I'm always kind of keeping an eye on that stuff and trying to keep up with those if I can. And I kind of did a bunch of more structured stuff, and I think for the rest of the year I might be doing a bit more of these kind of freeform idea-based streams versus like tutorial style. So anyways, that's what we're going. And thank you everybody for joining, for watching, and I will see you all in a couple days on Wednesday. Thanks for joining. Bye everybody.